Welcome to Inside Aesthetics, the world's leading podcast for injectors and aesthetic businesses. I'm Dr. Jake Sloan, an aesthetic doctor with over 16 years experience in facial aesthetics.
And I'm David Siegel, an entrepreneur and business mentor with over 20 years of experience in our industry. Our podcasts are aimed at industry professionals, and any information or advice given is general in nature. You should consult with a healthcare provider before undergoing any treatment.
You can also subscribe to us on Patreon for on-demand content for injectable and business education.
Right, Jake, we're here for, we spoke to Kate Goldie, Dr. Kate Goldie, might have been a number of months ago now.
About 2 months ago.
2 months ago. And we had our first serious IT challenge where we got to the end of the podcast, we uploaded it for our sound engineer to edit it, and he said, she sounds like she's an alien.
Well, it was actually us that sounded aliens. Kate was fine.
It was us.
We were unintelligible. And to this day, we still haven't diagnosed what actually happened. So first of all, we'd like to apologise to Dr. Kate Goldie for ruining your evening that day. But she graciously said she'll come back and talk to us. She actually said it was fun.
Yeah.
So she's back for round 2. So thank you, Kate. Any news from your week, David? What have you been up to?
Same old consulting. We've lined up a couple of work travel projects that we're going on. So you and I are going on our first working holiday together. So It's official. We're going to Thailand.
Are we sharing a bed?
No, I hope not.
Have we clarified that with Alma yet?
So we're heading across to Thailand with Alma to go and experience their academy.
Yeah.
Very excited about that. We might do some on-location discussions with various interesting people and KOLs that are over there. So that'll be fun. We're going for 5 days at the end of September, so not long to go.
Yeah.
I've just been confirmed as a speaker at Fresh Life up in Byron Bay. Again, at the end of next month. Or was it next month?
October.
October.
Yeah.
And then Perth as well for Hugel to talk at...
Wow, you're a busy boy.
For their nurse team over there on business stuff. So I've got a bit of travel coming up, which is unusual for me.
Very good, very good. Well, it's been a busy week for us. This is our 5th podcast this week.
No wonder I'm tired, yeah.
So we're all exhausted. And let's remind people about our new sort of subscriber episodes, and this will be one of them. So if you are new to the podcast, we have started doing 2 parts to some of our podcasts. Part 1, as this one is with Kate, will be free to all of you. You can listen to it on your favorite podcast app. Part 2 will be for subscribers only. Now, at the time of recording this, it's only available on Spotify, Part 2, and you'll have to be a member of our Patreon, and all the details are down below in the podcast description about how to get that. But in the meantime, we're also going to try and get these on Apple as subscriber only. So watch this space. If you like Apple rather than Spotify, we'll try and get the subscriber ones on there as well. Now, let's introduce Kate again. Kate, how are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, my morning. I know it's your evening, but yeah, good.
It's getting nice and sunny here in Sydney now.
It's
getting warm. I'm getting excited. The summer's here.
Yes, absolutely.
For the listeners who've never met Kate, she's a bit of a rock star. She's based in the UK. But Kate, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Please tell everyone what you do, how long you've been doing this, where your clinic is, and I guess, your specialty and your interest.
Yeah, so I've been around for quite a long time. So not as long as some, but longer than others. 18 years, I think, although it changes every year, so I have to keep counting. 18 years. So being in the UK almost really from when aesthetics was coming up, where we did a few nasolabial lines and that's all we did. And then I've been based, obviously I'm Scottish, but I work in London, and also I have a new place in the Cotswolds. So I have clinics in both places. I 50% of my time for the last at least 14 of those 18 years has been about teaching. So I've been on the road, like yourself, like over 75 countries, which means like 76.
Wow.
I like that kind of it's a marketing way of saying lots of places. Over 75 countries. Somewhere around that. I was on the road for a long time doing a lot of teaching all of the continents. I think that was probably it was like, you have to do your time. That was me doing my time, because every time you go, you go to a new country, you're going to Asia. You're going to Asia in September. Like, you have to completely switch everything, your aesthetic eye, the way you inject. And each time you go to somewhere, you you definitely bring back more than you took. That's been my experience over the years. So it's been a privilege to travel for so many years. Over this time, I've developed I like to think that I'm able to stand back and see the big picture. It's my favorite thing to do, like kind of defocus your eyes and see what the patterns are. And a long time ago now, I looked outside our specialty. It's a thing I think everyone should do. If you want to have insights into your own specialty, look at others. So I looked at like orthodontics for understanding how to inject chins, for example. And during that process of always doing that, I was looking in regenerative medicine and then understanding how this translational field of medicine, what it is, and then seeing how does this apply to us? And then from that point, about 10 years ago it was, I think I did my first thing about 8 years ago. I've been on a little bit of a mission, like a crazy prophet in the desert. Like
We'll start calling you Moses.
Yes. I could get the hair, yeah. But really kind of thinking that this was a kind of a mission to say that we're doing something more profound to tissue than we've thought. Like the thing we told ourselves was, this is inert, it doesn't do anything, therefore good. Now that is true. I'm not saying that's not true, but in fact, it doesn't do anything not good, but what we've been doing has beneficial aspects to tissue development and probably much more profound than we've ever thought. And if you look outside of our field, like you take something that we're going to talk about today, calcium hydroxyapatite, if you just look outside at the regenerative scientists, they know about this substance. They understand that it has a capacity to be regenerative in the tissue. So we've been injecting it in our little bubble that we are. We've been doing all sorts of things, kind of isolated from the rest of medicine, in a way, isolated. But what's happened is that we've done a lot of clinical translation for tissue modulation. And the bringing those two things together, the scientists and us, is key. And that is what regenerative aesthetics is. And that is what has been an important part of my mission, if you want to call it like that.
Fantastic. Well, for the listeners, I guess the premise to this episode, this is the second chapter of our Masterclass series. Kate, you were going to be number one, but we stuffed up with our bad recordings. You're now number two. So sorry about that. Is we're going to, as Kate has sort of done a great prelude to, we're going to sort of explore this concept of what is regenerative aesthetics. And one of the, I guess, ingredients to that is calcium hydroxyapatite, or one of the most commonly used products is called Radiesse. So we're going to sort of explore that angle. Anything to add to that preamble, David?
No, well, I just think it's interesting to sort of look at what we mean by regenerative aesthetics, because we've obviously got this parallel, I wouldn't call it industry, but thought process potentially around the full body system, health, diet, biohacking. There's peptides out there, there's stem cells. And so we're sort of seeing this convergence of what we've been doing, as you said, Kate, in our little bubble here in the aesthetics world, with fillers and biostimulators and toxins, obviously. But then we've got the other side of things, and it's sort of good to sort of differentiate what are the difference, where's the crossover, and then potentially what does the future look like as these disciplines inevitably sort of merge, and whether we do them within one practice or whether it becomes part of a holistic team of people to take care of an individual. I think it's a really interesting and exciting space.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to pick up on what you said, Kate. So how have you gone down this sort of prophetic journey? Like what are you doing day to day, apart from obviously treating patients and doing your Kate Goldie experience course, which we're going to talk about at the end? But what do you do? Do you do research? Are you in a lab? Are you traveling to America to go to the lab where they make Radiesse? What happens behind the scenes?
Done all of those things, but not just Radiesse, but also exosomes, for example, or other things. What I've done is, it's hard when it's a translational field of medicine, which is really interesting to think that regenerative aesthetics really is that, where you have to have people with different specialties. So it's not something that we can just think up on our own. We'll be like, let's just think up that, like a really good marketing term, brilliant. Now, what could fit into that with no contact with scientists? So, for example, take exosomes, properly termed. EVs, right, extracellular vesicles. And I knew, of course, then, because I was looking at these food for a long time, I was tracking them and like, it's just going to be so interesting. They're amazing. And we can talk a little bit later about why they fit into everything else. But my process for that was, okay, I don't know enough even to know what the questions to ask.
Yeah.
I don't really I super understand the basic science, which tells me that they have a huge potential to create youth. Now, like, you take a little bit of science, basic science, that is heterochronic parabiosis, right? You see that. Heterochronic parabiosis, where you get old mouse and young mouse. It's a grim study. You put connect the blood supply to them, and then just see what happens. Now, many people studied that, and they found that, wow, this is amazing. Like, on many, many measures, the old mouse got young, like on skeletal mass, importantly for neural function. So, for example, that mouse couldn't solve a maze before, and now it can solve a maze. So, like, is it like all of the blood, or could it just be like, is it the cells in the blood, or is it just the messengers? Is it just the exosomes? So what they did is they just gave plasma, they filtered out all the blood cells. What happened? The same thing. So there's a bit of basic science that if we're, defocusing and looking at the patterns, we're like, wow, something in that mix of compounds that is released from young cells has a huge and kind of pan-regenerative capacity to change lots of different things in an old mouse who has old cells.
Who did that study? Sorry.
Oh, there's many people. A woman called Wager. I always get her name wrong.
Okay.
She did lots of studies, but there was many. It's not just one study. There was lots and lots of people that had did that.
Okay, if you're a patron, we're going to find these papers and supply you with them. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
So they looked at all these studies, and of course, they're like, some people are like that team were like, okay, what is it in those compounds that is doing it? And they're like, oh, maybe it's like, CD11, like one of the substances. So then they take one of those things, and then they try and test it to see if the same result will come from one thing that you've taken from that, which is generally higher in younger blood. And then what happens? No, it's not. It doesn't work the same.
Right.
In that story, it tells you lots of different stuff. It tells you that there's a huge capacity that in younger messages, and that in older beings, our cells are mostly acting in the way that they do because of the surrounding messages that they are getting. It's not only that, but the surrounding messages and that sort of microenvironment around cells are making them act, and they have a capacity to be able to act like younger cells. If you give them a different environment, they can act like younger cells. This is really, really important.
Yeah.
So you look at kind of basic science like that, and then think, right, to your question, what do we do about it? Well, it's really complex science, and then there's lots of people who are making, purified exosomes from younger cells. So, right, what do we do then? So my answer was, I don't know enough about it to ask the questions. I don't know, any company could come along and tell me anything, and I would not have the ability to be able to see my way through that forest of information or basic science. I can understand it, of course, but not enough to be able to navigate it. So I went to the University of Loughborough, and I, during COVID, funded a 2-year program to take exosomes from various places to make our own, and to analyze them, what's in them, what's not in them, what's important, and use that as a learning for me, and for me to understand how I can navigate the way that way through, so that I can, when I'm using them in a confident way. They've been like super analyzed by people who don't care about anything about any company, and because I believe in the future of them, like not necessarily every part of the present, but because I believe in where it's going, then I'm able to navigate that in a scientific way. So that's one way which I just couldn't do it in any other way.
Fantastic. Well, we found someone for chapter 8 of our Masterclass Exosomes.
Yeah. Well, where do you think it's going, Kate? What do you think the next stage looks like? Yeah.
So there's a thing that they say, I watched the World Stem Cell Summit. If you watch it, there's a thing which they're like, of a Saturday evening, if you're bored, let me watch the World Stem Cell Summit. Like, there's the thing that they say, right, in the panels where there's traditional medicine where they make drugs, and then like the FDA come to them and say, right, you tell us exactly what is in that drug, what its mechanism of action is, everything about it, and we'll tell you whether you can do it or not. So with regenerative medicine, it's much harder because these are usually biological, and what you're doing is you're doing a much kind of more basic thing where you're using, like, take EVs. There's so many compounds in that. Because it's through years and years of evolution, then you've got lots of synergies. You've no idea what those synergies are. Like maybe one of these substances has a synergy with another substance. So they have a thing where they're saying, I'm not 100% sure how it did it, but I can make it do it again. Right? So this is like two completely different things in medicine. So if we take regenerative aesthetics, right, we have compounds, we see clinical results. We're like, this is amazing. But we have to get to a point where we're sure enough about what if we're injecting it, we have to be sure enough about what we're injecting. We may not be able to say exactly how it's working in every way. We will not probably be able to reduce it down to a compound, because it's like, as soon as you do that, you lose the efficacy.
Yeah.
So over time, what will happen is exosomes will become a drug for sure. They will be developed to be as targeted as possible. There'll be less of a kind of like, it's a porridge. We're not sure what's in that porridge.
Yeah.
But it'll be much more specific. I think AI will come into that. I think when you have a thing which is a substance which is very complex and there's lots of different patterns to it, AI will be much better at sorting out what's doing what. But you can't take away that it has profound effects on the tissues. And so therefore I think of it like, is it the present? A bit debatable. Is it the future? Yeah.
Yeah. Especially once you start combining artificial intelligence with quantum computing. I don't know if you've heard about quantum computing yet, but apparently the technology that's here or is about to be here, I mean, these computers have processing speed, which is like infinitely more powerful than the most powerful computers we have today. So being able to run experiments and hypothesis and come up with different sequencings, it's just going to be like, I don't think anyone's prepared for where it's going to go. No. But we should probably talk about
AI at this speed as well.
Yeah.
But and pattern recognition, as long as we can supply the systems, or if it's doing it super fast, like quantum computing, and then with AI on top of it, it relies on us giving it data,
absolutely,
or things to work with. And as long as we can do that, it's going to spot the patterns.
Yeah.
Which I think, if you look at complex evolutionary systems, like EVs, for example, then it has a huge ability to be able to see patterns and efficacies and synergies where we don't see them.
Yeah. Hey guys, quick interruption to remind you about one of our partners, Vida. The founder of that company, Fiona Tuck, has been on the podcast numerous times before, most recently on episode 225, where we were talking about collagen. I use Vida every day. I use their Omega Plus, I use their Purity Greens, I use their Collagen Boost, and I use their Infinity Antioxidant Vitamin C. So those are the products I use on a daily basis. I don't know about you, Jake. You're probably not quite as strict or stringent as I am, or are you going to surprise me?
I'm on a range of supplements.
Okay.
I have tried Vitasol. First of all, it tastes good, because the problem with some of these products is they taste awful. Mm-hmm. But as I understand it, these are marine-derived collagens. They are high concentration,
Yep.
efficacious. Some of the studies, if you look at, collagen supplementation, you've got to be over a certain threshold, and these products are that. And they taste good, and they're affordable as well.
Yeah. So as I said, Fiona's been a friend of the podcast for a long time. I've known her for many years. We use the product ourselves. There are lots of green powders out there on the market. I've tried most of them. This is by far and away my favorite. So what do we have for our listeners, Jake, in terms of an offer?
To take advantage of the offer, which is 10% off any of the Vitasol range, if you go to the link at the bottom of our podcast description under IA offers and use the code IA10 in the shopping cart.
Yeah. And for those of you that would like to offer this in your own clinics, head to their website, send them an inquiry, and on your opening order, you get 5 free collagen boosts.
Fantastic. That's a value of about $180.
It is. Yep.
Perfect. So guys, check it out. We'll be introducing more of these IA offers in the middle of the podcast so we can get into the podcast quicker and you don't have to skip the start. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. I want to bring us back down to earth because about 4 podcasts ago, we had Dr. Ben Talley on.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know Ben Talley, Kate. He's a plastic surgeon based in Beverly Hills. And he mainly does faces. And it was quite a interesting podcast because he gave the surgeon's perspective on biostimulators and what he sees and what he feels about them from a macroscopic level, not a histological or regenerative perspective. And he said, I don't want to misquote him, but he basically said, we need to stop pretending that we're delivering magic into the tissues. He said, at the end of the day, you're making some scar tissue. And that's really paraphrased. He didn't actually say those words, but that's sort of how we interpreted it. And so I think that's a great starting point. We've sort of heard of where we might be going from yourself, and we heard from Ben, and now that sort of sets the scene for, I guess, the basic science of calcium products.
Yeah, we're just giving people a prelude for what's potentially coming when we talk about exosomes. So you've had a little preview there.
Yes, exactly.
But that's how we go. We go.
And also, just in context of that, so sorry, I should have said it before. That was kind of an answer of a process. How do you investigate something? Or are you trying to get to this state? But in terms of the big players of regenerative aesthetics, and maybe that's worthwhile mentioning at the moment, because so we've got a clear structure, so we can look at things in different pillars. So if we say that exosomes and potentially polynucleotides, although we can discuss that later, peptides, all of these would be things that communicate directly to the cells. So they would be biochemical cues. And the other major pillar is scaffolds. So things that physically support tissues. I think that's where we can talk about biostimulators. So these are 2 different categories. And then, of course, there's physically putting in cells. Now, that could be stromovascular fractions, for example, or stem cells, often done in surgery. So if there are 3 main pillars, then we at least if we have a structure to look at it, and then we're like, what? They're not different, they're not necessarily competing, but they have ways of being able to combine so that when we break it down and look at calcium hydroxyapatite, at least we know we're looking at that pillar.
Yeah, I have to say, I think a lot of injectors, and I'll probably include myself in this, there's been a lot of confusion over those 3 pillars or just all of the ingredients that are available to us. And, you just go onto any injector WhatsApp group and people are like, so exosomes, what do I do with these things? What am I expecting? No one knows, and yet they're available and people are buying them and either needling them in or injecting them in. No one has really any clue. So it'd be definitely interesting to another podcast just on that. So why don't we just, I guess, step back sort of about 10 steps and just talk about normal skin aging? Because I think it's a good starting point. And I think a lot of these masterclass episodes will start with that sort of simple premise because everyone's got their own take on it. So why, I guess, in your opinion, does the skin age? And is that kind of predetermined? Is it genetic? Is it because it's too sunny in Australia? Like, just give us your flavor on aging, I guess, and I guess the aesthetic effects of that.
Well, if you want to show the most beautiful exhibit of aging, it'd be like Scottish people in Australia.
Yeah.
So Scottish people in Australia. So you start off with, you've evolved to live in somewhere where the sun doesn't shine very often. That's what's interesting about Scotland, why it's extremely hard to live there, why they were kind of tough, is because it's not just cold, it's very wet and there's not much sunlight. So therefore, there's a case where your genetics starts with less collagen, less structure to the skin, has less need to be combating sunlight. And so therefore you stick it into an environment of genetics that come with poorer structure, and then to some extent, and then you put it in where the environment is extremely harsh. So therefore you have one of the main forms of skin aging would be sunlight. That we know that, everyone knows it now. To Doris Day for 5 minutes and she'll tell you, there's nothing looks as good as, and what does she say? I love that phrase. There's nothing that's as good as in your 50s as sunscreen in your 20s. Like really, like that is because she and we all know that the single most important ager of tissue, yes, is environmental factors, of which sun is the highest. But when you start off with your genetics, and even within the population, Scots, for example, there's a big variety of starting points where you come from in terms of visual aging. And that's usually to do with the structure and the way your own skin's made, and that's genetic. And then, but from that point, and we've done lots of different publications, one of them was all about skin quality. And we looked at 4 ways where if you look at someone and think, oh, they've got amazing skin quality, we looked at 4 EPCs, which is firmness, evenness, tone, and 4 EPCs, firmness, evenness, tone, and glow. Yeah. Now, you need all of them for someone to look young. And all of them dissipate as we get older, and they dissipate for very specific reasons. So the firmness that people have less, it just looks less firm, it feels less firm, it moves less firm. And that comes from both deep collagenous structures and fat support, as well as in the skin itself. So that visual aging is to do with all of the collagen primarily being degraded, changed over time, as well as in the tissue. And then you get, unevenness of skin, obviously, wrinkles. And again, you have if you look at the skin particularly, collagen, of course, is the main player, but not the only player. You've got elastin, as people talk about more and more. That's your skin ability to recoil as well. But all of that gives the surface of the skin like that kind of uneven effect. And then, of course, tone, excess melanin production, the cells themselves not working particularly well or overworking. And then, of course, the outcome would be the glow. And that means you've got kind of all of the substance in between all of the cells is being degraded. So if we look at that on a small scale, you've got, like, if it's like a bowl of soup, right? You have a beautiful bowl of soup in the beginning, perfect broth, noodles, all nicely made. And then in that, you've got peas. So the broth would be your ground substance, which includes hyaluronic acid and proteoglycans. And it's the thing which helps the cells communicate to each other. So that's the broth. It's a bit of a jelly, really, more like. Then you have your structural proteins. So you have collagen and elastin. When you're young, they're all laid out beautifully. The elastin is integrated in and connected in with the collagen. It's like one beautiful connected scaffold. And sitting on that scaffold in this lovely jelly is these cells. And they are in soft tissue. They're completely supported by the noodles, by the scaffold, the structure underneath. They don't exist on their own. They're not bobbing around in the soup. They are attached to the noodles. And they only work if they're attached to something. If they're bobbing around, they don't do anything. So this whole system, that is the environment that we work in, where you have structure, ground substance, and resident cells. That is what we are trying to improve. That is an ecosystem. An ecosystem is the interaction between the structure and the beings that live inside it. So the beings are the cells, and the structure is what we're trying to improve. So the structure that we see, but the structure is only made if those cells are happy. So our job in regenerative aesthetics is to make those cells as happy as we can possibly make them.
Yeah, I think injectors have been using HA for so long that they have maybe in their head decided that we just need to fill a space, and that's as far as the science goes. But regeneratively, it's you're saying that actually no, it's a moving, talking, everything needs to be happy, as well as have structure, as well as have the right environment. And if any of that is off kilter or killed by UV damage, then suddenly it's sort of a vicious cycle, and the homeostasis is damaged. So
exactly. Aging is a lack of homeostasis. Exactly. Yeah. So in a nutshell, aging is a lack of homeostasis, of which, like when we look at aging of the tissues, it's interesting because it shows evolution in process, where you're like, you have this aging, it's all working in harmony, right? Homeostasis. Then suddenly it starts to tip off. You get breakdown of the collagen from sun. The cells are suddenly not attached. So I keep doing this, right? Being a fibroblast.
Kate's acting like a fibroblast.
Not attached again to the structure behind them. And then as soon as they're not attached and sitting there like that, then it's not like they try and make that situation better. They make it worse because they produce MMPs. They produce metalloproteinases much more when they're not attached, which then further breaks down everything around them. And then they divide until they become senescents. And then they really, senescent, so they can't divide anymore. So they're just sitting there, just releasing the worst exosomes that they possibly can. But basically, so they're just like, right, let's just take down this being. If we're not attached and we're not going to divide anymore, we're not going to sit and do nothing. We're going to basically break everything down. So then there's this aging cascade and cascade and cascade. As those cells, the more they build up, those senescent cells, break down more and more and more of the surrounding tissue, aging, cascade, mortality.
Yeah. So we've spoken about sun being, I guess, public enemy number one when it comes to aging. How much do you think things like exercise, diet, stress, like reducing stress in your life, sleep, removing pro-inflammatory foods from your diet, how much do you think they contribute to this aging process, and where do you put them in terms of, public enemy? Sun's number one, but, we've all seen these people in our lives that go through a traumatic experience, they lose a loved one, and you just see them age almost immediately. So it seems that it's a lot more complex than just the sun. There's other things going on too, right? What's your position on those factors?
I think that's probably, it's a huge, huge factor. You're quite right. In our clinic, you see high cortisol levels, you see poor skin. I mean, you just see, if you take any person at the age of 60 or 50, the difference in how old they look with no treatment is a huge part to do with their life as well as their genetics. And that's all of these other factors. And I think that in longevity medicine, they are now looking at the skin as such a great marker to be able to track internal aging. And I don't know about you, in my clinic, right, I have people who go through divorce or loss of loved ones, and then they come in and as you say, you see them. It's like years off them. But you also see them, even if with no treatment at all, like a year or so down the line, and I don't know, they've given up that job, or they've just moved on, or their grief processes, they're partway through it, and they just look amazingly better. And so you see temporary and dips of aging, and then people recover to their normal aging again. But I think that, to your point, that is part of what we're doing, is that we're realizing, I'm doing this on the surface. So if you think about it, at first we do things that shape, surface, and then they improve people's confidence. That's amazing. They start to move in society differently. That's classic aesthetics, right? Makes a huge impact. The next one is these local tissues. Can we optimize the health of those local tissues? The next layer is, okay, even with that, the biggest player for aging is everything from skin gut access to cortisol levels. So that's why we're naturally being pulled on this journey, is because the skin is just a big sign, it's a big player, and we can't really do our job unless we can try and optimize it inside out as well as from the outside in.
Hey guys, we're just going to talk to you quickly about an IA offer that we have with Bacteriostatic Water. We've mentioned them before on the podcast. Jake, tell us about the offer.
Yep. Well, first of all, this is one of our most popular, I guess, partners because everyone uses either Bacteriostatic Water or saline in their clinics. They're doing a special offer this month. So it started September 1st and it will go through the rest of the month. If you buy a pack of 10 of their Bacteriostatic salines, you get 5 vials free. So that's actually pretty good value. It's like a 50% discount effectively.
Amazing.
Plus, on top of that, if you apply the code IA10, you'll also get an extra 10%, which is our normal discount.
Yep.
So if you want to take advantage of that, just go to the bottom of the podcast description, IA offers, and this is under our global offers section. So if you're anywhere in the world, States, America, Australia, etc., this can be applied to you. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Now we're going to, I guess, focus at least on the second half of this podcast on the use of calcium to, I guess, optimize all of that stuff that you've just said. But can you just like really focus in on collagen and elastin? Like, I know there's many types of collagen, and we'll be here all day if we talk about all of them. But in kind of layman's terms, what's your understanding of what it is, what happens to it? And, you know, you've already mentioned it's sort of the structural thing. So what can Radiesse do to it to make it better? How does that process work?
Yeah, okay, so top line then, fibroblasts make the structure, they make the noodles. They make both collagen and elastin. And in addition to that, they also make the soup. They make ground substance, they make proteoglycans, and they make the GAG. So those little cells, and why we're talking about them so much, are the key to making everything. And then, of course, we need to try and do two things. We need to try and give them the best physical environment, the best messages that they can have. But with fibroblasts, like we said, they have this thing called mechanotransduction. They only work well if their integrins are attached onto something that they can hold on to. When they do that, the little fibers, the actin fibers, which are stretched, when they're stretched, then there's like a domino effect to the DNA, and then the function of that cell changes. The function depends on mechanotransduction. That's really key.
Yeah.
So since aging is decreasing all the structure underneath, then we want to intervene in that system by supporting the cells directly. And we'll talk about calcium hydroxyapatite, how that's one of the ways that it's shown, and we'll think about the evidence for that, that's a role that it plays. It increases and replaces mechanotransduction of cells. We see that in gene arrays. The process itself, like when we talk about collagen, we're like, oh, you know, we used to have the very simply, we used to be like, type 1 collagen, it's great because that's like young collagen. Type 3 is bad, it's trauma collagen. So then, of course, the reality is, of course, they're neither good nor bad. We need balance. If you look at, there's studies on facelifts. People who have a really good balance, a youthful balance between type 1 and type 3, they recover much better from facelifts than people which changes. So that as we get older, we get generally less type 1, we get more type 3, but it's all about balance. Every collagen structure in our body has a very specific. If we put too much type 1, it gets too stiff.
Right.
So an evolving concept as we're thinking about collagen is that it's all about, like what you were saying, it's all about harmony, balance, and ecosystem. So it's not as simple as make a lot of collagen. So that's one thing when we think about aging and trying to reverse aging, we need to replace the whole ecosystem and not about pushing a lot. And that goes a little bit back, and maybe we can talk to about this, the debate amongst Ben and the plastic surgeons, who I think they're not wrong, but they're not right. Like, as in, do you know what I mean? They're not wrong. They're telling you exactly what they're seeing. But if you look at the science of it, if you stuff far too much of something in any biological system, like say if you put calcium, just calcium on its own, not calcium hydroxyapatite, just calcium on its own, there are regenerative windows. In calcium, if you put massive calcium in any system, it's negative.
Yeah.
If you put too little, it does nothing. If you have you'll have a regenerative window where calcium will upregulate regenerative processes. These are biological systems. It's not a never-ending thing where you just keep hammering away with one thing. And to some extent, what the surgeons are flagging up, they're like, look, it doesn't mean to say that this is when we look at the science and we try and get dosing and the right amount, and we work with tissue and we understand the science of upregulating systems with the right amount of product. This is true. We see lots of science around that. So it's not as simple as my eye sees that, so therefore this substance is always not correct. That's too simplistic and it isn't correct. But what they're saying is true. They're saying if you keep bashing away at skin, then it may look good from the surface, but it's not necessarily good. And of course, different supplements have different modes of action.
Yeah. So when it comes to how fast we lose these structures, so collagen and elastin, maybe we'll just keep them together because they seem to, you need both of them. There's no point having lots of collagen with no elastin or vice versa. So when do we start losing them, and how fast does this process tend to unravel itself? Does it vary from sort of person to person, or is it fairly universal?
Yeah, person to person, but younger than you think. So like people are losing collagen and elastin in their 20s, so that it's like you only start seeing it much later on, but people are losing it decade by decade. The rate and what like is like what they were stacked with in the beginning, and then is different for different people. So Scots down here, the environment they're in, and then as they go through, then from that stack that they start with, they will lose consistently. You know, you're like at your optimal in your teens, and then you just start losing it from then on, and then you just start seeing it much later on. So by the time you get into like your 50s and 60s, you've lost significant amounts of that basic structure.
Yeah.
So there's lots of discussion about that and saying, okay, you know, should we be intervening with people in their 30s? Well, I mean, that's one way that people are pushing for people to use sunscreen, like use it before you think you need to use it, because they're saying try and not destroy as much of your stack that you have. Try and keep it as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then you'll just be losing less as you go. So you just kind of like, it's multifactorial.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. It's difficult, isn't it? Because we've got a lot of people now with vitamin D deficiencies.
Yep.
You know,
exactly.
It's just like you can't win. You're either getting too much sun damage and you're killing all your elastin and collagen supplies, or you're vitamin D deficient, which has, you know, we know it's a very important substance in the body in terms of your immune system and many other bodily functions. So it's tough being a human, Kate. It really is.
It is. It's because
especially a Scottish one.
We're in an environment. Yeah, we evolve in an environment where oxygen is toxic to us.
Yeah.
So basically, it creates free radicals, and the sun itself is, I mean, obviously it has lots of benefits. I think people are diving into that a little bit more, you know, like the way when you eat green food, then you can actually photosynthesize a little bit. Like these sort of things we were understanding where like it's a little bit more connected to environment. But yeah, evolution is an imperfect system.
Yeah. And we're not really designed to live this long. I mean, if you look at how long our teeth last, we're not really meant to probably live past the age of 40, really. We're meant to be old enough to reproduce, and then pretty much our job's done. So I mean, we're trying to rig the system.
Biohacking.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're biohacking by doing what we've been doing all this time, which is just getting us to live a bit longer. And now we have a whole different set of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a certain freedom. I think aesthetic plays a role in that, like that freedom to live how you want to live longer.
Well, I don't know if you've heard about this little tangent. People, when you're wearing sunglasses, because your eyes play such an important role in terms of melanin release in your skin, when you're wearing sunglasses all the time, your body doesn't release melanin. And so it could actually, wearing sunglasses could actually make you more susceptible to sun damage. I don't know. I haven't had that verified. I heard it somewhere on a podcast. I can't remember who said it, but it makes sense to me. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, Kate, but we're learning.
I heard it. You actually don't know the truth of it as well.
Yeah.
But I heard it years ago. And so everyone's like, oh, it's just, you know, because it's one of these things. Is this good? Is this bad? But I heard it as well. But I've never looked into the science, whether it's actually true or not. But yeah.
Crazy. Now, I guess to conclude part one, let's just very briefly dangle the word Radiesse and what it is. And then in part two, we're going to get into how you use it, both on label, off label, maybe on the face, neck, and body to do all this magic that you're talking about. So Kate, what is Radiesse? How does it come prepared? What does it look like? What's in the syringe? Just for those people who've never touched it before.
So for me, the thing with Radiesse was, it's interesting because I worked with Merz, who make Radiesse, for a long time. They're a really nice family, and the company's kind of very ethical. So the journey with this one for me is very different. This is more like, I was like looking at the patterns of the research. I was like, this is really interesting. This looks like that this substance here is creating a large number of components from that ecosystem, not just one. It seems to be doing it in a very pan-tissue way. And then I was like going to Merz and being like, this is really interesting. If you look at in the field of regeneration, they are looking at calcium hydroxyapatite and being like, this is regenerative, but Merz was very cautious, as they should be. You know what I mean? Their German, family's German. They're like, whatever. I was like, every year I'd be like, think about it. Think about how interesting the substance is. So there's the opposite way from things coming at me. This is me like trying to convince them for a long time that this is like, and not just me, other people looking at that and going, this is it creates a profound change in the tissue when used correctly. What it is it is calcium hydroxyapatite. Those are calcium and phosphate spheres. They are made in a very specific way. They're made so they're solid spheres in Radiesse, solid spheres. They're sintered very high temperatures. And then those spheres are worked. So they're just the right amount of smoothness, porosity, so that they will be very biocompatible, but they have other functions, which we'll talk about later. Now, those little spheres, 30% of them are floated in a gel. That's our carboxymethylcellulose gel, just basically a long-chain sugar. And the original design was put it in, that gel will gradually break down over 3 to 6 months, roughly. And then the spheres themselves will interact with the fibroblasts, and then they will recreate a kind of scaffolding around it. Now, what we know is that they don't just create collagen, they create type 1 and type 3 collagen. They create elastin. Studies show that they also create the jelly as well in response to contact with Radiesse, so proteoglycans. There's studies that show that calcium hydroxyapatite will produce proteoglycans as well. So this is like we're adding up our ecosystem. So that's why it's potentially interesting. And we know that one of the mode of actions of that is that they physically support the cells. Right. Like you can see a fibroblast in connection with it. You see them lying really flat. Fibroblasts, if they're not attached, are round. Fibroblasts, when they're attached, they flatten off because basically their wee hands are on whatever they're beside it. So when they flatten off, that is the morphological position that they should be in, where they create what they normally create, which is the whole array of collagen and the whole business. They make the whole bowl of soup, basically. Now, they can do other things. They can make just one thing, or they can make the whole bowl of soup. So we see that Radiesse does that.
So I think what you were getting at is originally when Radiesse was launched, I don't know when it was first launched, early 2000s or...
It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
It's like, I was actually at the factory there. So this is like 15 years now, I want to say. Because I've been using it for a long time, yeah.
But it was launched, I guess, as a, inverted commas, filler. It was sort of shaping a jawline or an area of the body, and I think what you're
actually even designed. It was used in medicine, so it was formed to make this. It was used in. There's a thing called Radiesse voice as well, so implanted to help the vocal cords meet, and so it was used within medicine, but it was not actually interestingly designed to be a biostimulator.
Yes,
so it's not designed to be primarily stimulating lots of collagen, actually, which is probably why it sits in this window of doing something a little bit different if you put the right amounts and you get the right dosing, etc., etc. so that it was designed for medicine, brought in, and it was used as a filler. It was used because, of course, it was bioform. That was in the States. There was no big volumizers really at the time in the States, so therefore it was very much positioned as a on the bone, on the periosteum, volumizing filler.
Yeah. So 2000, apparently, it was released in the United States, and in 2004 in Europe, and originally indicated for facial shaping, correction of small and large soft tissue deficits.
It would definitely be FDA approved for nasolabial folds, probably.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't want to lie, but they're
14
all
14 years. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yes, so it's around a long time, and there's been a lot of research on it as well.
1424.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 18 years, yeah.
No, it's interesting because, often when products are launched, and particularly by pharma, they want it to be used on label, and yet, it seems to be that the work behind the scenes of people like yourself and Yanni van Longhem and other people, you've almost realized using it off label, it's better. And so, or it certainly has more function and more interesting things to do with it. And that's probably not what pharma wanted originally, because they don't like people going off label.
It's like a whole industry.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so I guess what I'm getting at is, unless you have people who are willing to push the boundaries, we won't evolve the industry. But that can't be done by pharma because they're a bit conservative about it. So we kind of need crazy people, is what I'm saying.
The world is fueled by crazy people. That's right. And I think that exactly, for me, what was interesting was, say, for example, you take, and I know we'll talk about it more, so the way that we change Radiesse, the way that we hyperdilute it, the way we inject it in lots of different areas where it was never originally, the way that we use it primarily for skin quality or skin tightening, etc., etc. That was, people say, who did that for the first time? And I'm like, this is a grassroots movement. Like, I know because years and years ago, I was somewhere like in Germany, for example, and people were saying, oh yeah, I hyperdilute them and put it in the décolletage. I hyperdilute it and doing this, because people were just like, because like, I don't know, people in aesthetics, there's obviously people who are like very vocal and they're talking, but there's also lots and lots and lots of people who are extremely innovative. They are in their practice, they're not necessarily talking about it, but they're like trying different things. And so it was a grassroots movement by our industry, and our industry is full of innovators.
Yeah.
Whether they're vocal about it or not, it's like there's tons and tons of people who are constantly trying to think and look and see what happens when they change things. And actually, usually there are people, but those people who speak quite often are taking those ideas from so many other people. So it is a grassroots movement.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, well, that's a nice segue into part 2.
Yeah, hopefully that's whet your appetite, guys. So those of you who have enjoyed part 1 for free, part 2 will be out now as well, but that's for subscribers only. If you need to know how to subscribe or you're not quite sure, just go to the bottom of the podcast description and check it out. But thank you, Kate. We really appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you in part 2.
Yeah, see you soon. It's great.
For our latest news, follow us on Instagram at Inside Aesthetics Podcast. If you want to get in touch with myself or David, follow us on Instagram as well at Dr. Jake Sloan and David_Inside Aesthetics.
Join our Patreon for invaluable business and injectable education. Get access to our global community of like-minded professionals, live and interactive Zoom sessions, hints and tip videos, webinars, and more. Head over to www.insideaesthetics.com/Patreon for more information.